Friendship isn't the big things, it's a million little things. Hello there, friends, and welcome to this, another episode of A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is where we break down and discuss episodes of TV shows that you may not have even heard of. I believe these TV shows need a little more love, and that is what this platform is here to do. Each week we will be covering different shows from all over the globe. We'll be breaking down each episode, giving you the main highlights, and going through it bit by bit. But for now, I think it's best that we find out what's on the menu today. Hello there, and welcome back to this A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is now Season 6, Episode 10 of the podcast, and today we're going to be heading back down to Baton Rouge to be talking about National Treasure, Edge of History, Season 1. Now, this has been a very fun season so far, and I've absolutely loved rewatching this show. Again, it's one of those shows that until you rewatch it, you forget how fun it is. It obviously has the connections to the National Treasure franchise, and it just brings a lot of the nostalgia back. It really makes me want to watch those films again and reconnect with the characters as much as possible. And of course, we're all hoping for that National Treasure 3 film, so hopefully that is going to be on its way pretty soon. But this will be the final episode on National Treasure Edge of History due to the fact that there was no more seasons after this. So unless they have a change of heart and bring out a new season, unfortunately this is going to be it. But it's been great to rewatch this show and a great adventure throughout. There are many shows quite like it, with like The Librarians and things like that, but this show is just special to me, just because of the connection to the National Treasure franchise. But anyway, that's enough waffle from me, so we're going to get back into it. This is National Treasure, Edge of History, Season 1, Episodes 8 to 10. Okay, let's have a little recap on what's been going on. So Jess has found out that Salazar, who was in prison, due to the fact that he tried to rob a bank, which held the third box that she has been looking for, is actually her father. And since Jess has the other two boxes that she stole from Billie earlier on in the season, this third box ends up completing the collection, and she manages to get it and put the puzzle together. The only issue is that the only man who can probably decipher it is her father, who of course is in jail, and so she is now south of the border in Mexico, where she may never be able to get back to the States due to her DACA status, and she now has to commit a criminal act by getting her father out of prison. Billie, however, has also worked out who Jess's father is, and that it is Salazar, or, in this case, not. And she has gone to visit Raphael in prison, which at the end of the last episode we saw Jess realise this and then realise that she had to break her father out of prison. So that's where we are at the minute. So let's get into the episodes. Episode 8, Prison Break. So we find out more of the backstory when it comes to Raphael and Billie and their past. It would seem that Billie's brother Sebastian was killed by Salazar, but Salazar has blamed Raphael for this, and that he did it under the name of Salazar, but not actually acting as Salazar. And so she is just furious at him. You can see the fury in Catherine Zeta-Jones's face. It's really good acting, in all fairness. The tears in her eyes just welling up, and the amount of passion in her voice. But I suppose that's why she's as good as she is. And then she tells him that your daughter Jess has two of the actual relics in her possession, which obviously Billie knows that she took from her. And she believes that Raphael knows where the third one is, and just asks him outright to tell her. Raphael doesn't, however, and Billie tells him that you're going to regret that, because I'm going to take the one thing that you love in this entire world away from you. Now, at this point, we already know that Jess has found the third relic and has put the puzzle together. And now she's in a race against time to try and get the clue out of it so she can finally find the treasure before Billie is actually on her trail. Raphael tells Billie that his daughter is miles away and that Billie has no hope of catching her. But of course, we know that Jess has just been outside the jail. Oren tells Jess that he thinks that she's absolutely crazy for doing what she's doing. And when he tries to get the vote of the others in the group, both Ethan and Tasha go to Jess's side because they know that she's going to do it with or without them, and they know that they've got a better chance with all three of them than not at all. Oren says that he can't be around this anymore and he decides to go home. As he does, however, he hears Jess and Tasha talking about the prison, and essentially how it's going to be a difficult way to get into it. But however, Oren remembers something about how when Hurricane Katrina happened and when the prisons flooded, the American prison system had to get updated to the international standard, because it needed better drainage systems underneath, and therefore gives them the idea of how to get into the prison. Liam, however, is still in the States, and is trying to hatch a plan to find out where Billie is. And of course he's using all of Miles's knowledge on how Billie runs her operation to try and make that happen. This includes how Billie has tapped each one of her employees' phones, including the one that she gave to Miles originally. When Liam inquires about his grandfather's murder, he asks him whether he was there on the night that it happened, and Miles tells him no, he wasn't, because Billie had given him the night off that night. And so the plan is that Tasha is going to break into the flooding system of the prison, hack it, and make it think that there is a flood on its way, so that it will drain the water from the system so that when a flood does arrive, it won't overflow. However, at this point, the whole system is going to be dry, and Jess has 10 minutes to get in and out. As she gets into the prison, she goes to her father's cell and ends up finding no one there. It seems that her father is gone. Just then she hears a prison guard approaching and she dives under her father's sheets, but of course the door is open, so the prison guard comes in and finds that it is Jess under the covers. At that point, Raphael appears behind him, chokes him out, and puts him under the covers himself. They both inquire what the hell each other are doing there, and of course Jess says that she's breaking out because Billie was going to kill him. He tells her that Billie's going to kill you, and I was breaking out myself. At this point, Tasha's plan has already gone by the wayside, and the flood defences are back on, and so they have to break out another way. Now, due to the fact that Raphael was going to break out anyway, there is obviously another way out, and so they take his way. As they get to the exercise yard, Raphael tells Jess that they have to get across this yard and use some bolt cutters on the gate at the other side. However, the difficult point of this is the fact that there is a watchtower with an armed guard on it. Raphael's plan is to use the power of the sun, and this is the most ridiculous plan ever, but to use a mirror to shine it into the eyes of the guard and distract him while he is taking shots at Jess. And each shot, obviously, is very close. He's obviously a trained guard, and Jess nearly gets shot at least twice. Eventually, the guard turns his attention to where the light is coming from and tries to take out Raphael. As he shoots at him, Raphael drops the mirror, and then, believing he's going to be taken down, kneels down on the ground and waits for the shot to come. A shot rings out, and we see that the guard is taken down. He yells at Jess to open the fence, and as she does, Tasha and Ethan turn up in the van. Everyone piles in and they drive off, and under the instruction of Raphael, they head to a certain destination. Oren gets back to the States, but as soon as he does and gets back to his place, Detective Ross turns up and she starts asking him questions about where he's been and where everyone else is. Oren tells her that he was at a shoe convention and she instantly spots his bag that says Mexico on it. She asks whether it was in Mexico and he tells her, oh, yeah, absolutely, it's an international thing. She gets frustrated by the non-answers that he's giving. All he's doing is sticking to his story about this shoe convention, even though she knows that Jess has gone further south. And so she walks away frustrated while she's just trying to help out. But of course, Oren at this point wants to protect Jess as much as possible. Detective Ross goes back to the officers at the FBI and starts talking to Agent Hendricks. Of course, it's Agent Ross, not Detective Ross. I was trying to think of the word and I just couldn't. Anywho, Agent Hendricks begins to look into this as well and begins to make phone calls, knowing that Jess is in Mexico, due to the information that Agent Ross believes that she has. Again, the FBI at this point still think that Jess is Peter Zadusky's killer. And speaking of Peter Zadusky, Miles is sat outside the house of Peter Zadusky, obviously now Liam's house. And at that point, Dario turns up with another one of Billie's henchmen. Dario goes inside with Miles while the other guy waits outside. He tells Dario that he's got Liam Zadusky inside and that Casey didn't do the job that she thought she had, i.e. killed him. Dario heads inside and is going to do the job himself. He starts to talk to him about Jess, but as he does, Miles injects Dario with something, making him pass out. They start to tie Dario up and take his mobile off him to try and find out where Billie is. This tracking device that Billie is using has a bunch of different people on it, like all over the globe. But they're only interested in one person at that point, and that's Casey. Wherever Casey is, Billie will be. And it's here that Liam finds out that Casey is in Mexico, and therefore that's where Jess must be. But while they're in this system, Casey also recognises that someone, i.e. Dario, has accessed this system and started looking into some of the files that are in there, including a Sadusky file which talks about Jack Sadusky, Liam's dad. And Liam has already found out that his father's last activity on this app was nowhere near where he actually died. And so now Liam begins to suspect that Billie had something to do with his father's death. Billie ends up calling Dario's phone, and Liam answers, even though Miles says it's a bad idea. He asks questions about his father, but Billie is just keeping him on the line enough to find out where he is. After the phone call, she tells Casey to call a team in to go and get them, both he and Miles. But at this point, the henchman that came with Dario has got suspicious and walked into the house. Liam and Miles put the tied-up Dario into Sadusky's clue room and wait for the other guy to come in. They hide behind Sadusky's desk, and as the other henchman walks in, he sees Dario tied up and goes to help him. At this point, they lock him in as gunshots ring out, and when Liam turns around, he sees that Miles has been hit. All at the same time, the other team turn up, and so Liam has to flee. He takes a book called Cross S Nostrum with him because he believes that his grandfather has been investigating this bunch of people for a long time, and he heads to safety. Tasha and Ethan, however, back down in Mexico, let Raphael and Jess out of the car because they're going to have to find their own way across the border. And then Ethan and Tasha end up going across the border but get caught up by the FBI. Jess and Raphael head off to meet Raphael's friend, who is going to try and get them across the border. However, first they've got to make a stop because years earlier, 20 years earlier to be precise, Raphael hid a book in a tree in the middle of nowhere that is an ancient tree that would potentially never be cut down. And so he goes and finds this book that has all the clues, all the evidence, and everything that they need to figure out the final clue and potentially find the treasure. Liam goes to speak to Oren and finds out that Jess is in fact in Mexico, and he can't believe it. He knows that Billie is really dangerous, and he tells him that we have to get to her and we have to help her. Jess shows her father the map. He was expecting the 3 boxes but didn't know what it actually was. And so when she shows him the full map, he realises that the map doesn't represent a river. It actually represents the sky. And as they begin to pinpoint the location, they find out that the treasure is on the Mississippi River, which is actually where Jack Sadusky, Liam's dad, died. And so Jack must have been closer than anyone has ever been. Just then Raphael's contact turns up, and it turns out to be Maddox. As Maddox says that he isn't going to hurt anyone, that he just wants to help, he gets shot by Casey. Billie and her team turn up and surround Jess's dad as Jess runs. But just then, Casey tells her that a mysterious pair of shoes that turned up at Raphael's cell were actually hers. She gave them to him, and she planted a tracker in them, because of course she did. She then tells Jess that she knows all about the Mississippi River, she knows where the treasure is, and that Jess can either come out and spare her father's life and give Billie the map, or her father will die. Jess won't be able to get back into the States, and Billie will take the treasure anyway. And so Jess decides to spare her father's life and go with Billie. Episode 9, A Meeting with Salazar. Billie arrives at an airport with Jess and Raphael in tow, and they start to search the two of them, knowing of course that Raphael has all this research on the treasure, and so she takes his book from him. Billie also knows that Ethan gave her something, but she says that it was a credit card that she gave back, and so she's searched. However, the phone that Ethan actually gave her, she's hidden in Casey's bag. Casey takes her bag and heads onto the plane, and so now, if they need to, they can still track her and find out where she is. Oren and Liam decide that it's time to go and speak to the FBI, and so they seek out Agent Ross. Oren tells her that everything that he said up till now was just trying to protect Jess, but now she really is in danger, and they need to find Billie as quickly as possible. At the very same point, Tasha and Ethan are brought in, and Tasha also gets interviewed by the FBI. Tasha tells Agent Ross absolutely nothing, even though Agent Ross is trying to befriend her. She's trying to make sure that Tasha feels open enough to be able to talk, but Tasha is way too stubborn. She knows these tactics. Until Tasha is asked to be let go. If Agent Ross really wants anything and wants to be their friend, she'll let them go. And so she does. All Agent Ross wants now is to find Jess and help get her back, as well as finding Billie at the same time. Agent Ross hands over a card, and on it says Agent Hannah Betsy Ross. And when Tasha inquires about the name, she says, yeah, my mother liked to sew. And if you're not American, you won't understand that reference too much, unless you've watched a lot of American type stuff, which I have. And Betsy Ross was the person who sewed the flag. So the Stars and Stripes are due to her. I think it was under George Washington. I'm not entirely sure. Someone will probably either tell me or I'll get told off by the National Treasure Hunt ladies. But Tasha, Orrin, Ethan and Liam are all let go from the FBI. And as they walk out, Ethan tries to call his own phone, the one that he gave to Jess. But of course it's been switched off. Tasha knows of a way to track it because the last time it was turned on was in Mexico, roughly where they left Jess. And so Tasha knows that she can track it, but she needs her own equipment. And so they have to head back to Tasha and Jess's place. On the plane, Billie is looking through Raphael's book of clues because she believes that in there is the answer to what happens when they get to the Mississippi River. However, throughout it, Raphael is just cool, calm and collected until the point when Billie finds a pencil. She takes it out and she starts to dismantle it because it's just a cover for something. And out drops a small needle. He tells her it was just Manuela's and he was just keeping it safe, but Billie knows better than that, because his demeanour has changed. At the very same point, Jess is trying to get her phone out of Casey's backpack, and each time she's sat across the table from Casey, and Casey is looking back and forth between what is going on with Billie and Jess, and every time Jess pulls it off brilliantly that she isn't doing anything. She manages to get the phone and turn it on, and once the phone is fully up, Casey looks down at the bag and thinks that Jess has been tampering with it. She asks what she took and she pats her down to try and find out what the hell it is. But Jess doesn't actually have the phone on her, and so she finds nothing, but Casey is now suspicious of her. After a really tough day with seeing everyone involved in this case, Agent Ross goes to meet Dr. Zeke for dinner. While she's there, she actually orders a big glass of wine, saying that she is having a rough day, even though it's only lunchtime at this point. He tries to cheer her up, and they start talking about this case. She tells him that even though she has a signed affidavit and she has all this evidence that points towards Billie Pierce, Hendrik still wants her to go after Jess. However, when she tells Dr. Zeke what happened with Liam, and more in fact what actually happened with Miles, she tells him that Liam said that Miles was dead in Peter Sadusky's study. However, when the FBI turned up, there was no body there. And so since there was no body, they didn't look for anything else. But Dr. Zeke reminds her that if there is no body, there would still be blood somewhere. And so he tells her he's got his kit in the car and that they can head over and investigate further. However, at the same time, Dario and his henchmen have actually found out that they don't have the right equipment anymore. They thought they'd picked up Miles's phone, but actually it's Liam Sadusky's. And so they need to head back there to Peter Sadusky's house to try and find the phone. Once they get there, however, Agent Ross and Dr. Zeke are already there. They're investigating, but they can't find any blood. As Dario and his henchmen walk in, Dr. Zeke and Agent Ross hide. Once they eventually find the phone, Agent Ross reveals herself, taking out the henchman, but Dario manages to get away. And so now they know that there are other people involved in this, and that there was an actual incident at Peter Sadusky's house with Miles. Jess manages to get the phone turned on and sends out an SOS. But since it's on Ethan's phone, it ends up going to Mina. Mina calls Orrin and tries to find out what the hell's going on and whether Ethan is okay. They tell Mina that Jess is in trouble and she sends over a pin, and they manage to track Jess to the Gulf of Mexico, so they know that she's on Billie's plane. Tasha manages to find a way to track Billie's plane and sees that they're just about to land somewhere just off the Mississippi River. It's going to be 2 hours till they can get there, but they have to set off immediately. And so that's where they're heading as they see that Billie has landed in her plane. Before they land, Billie discovers what the needle is for. She actually realises that Jess's necklace is some sort of compass, and she knows that where they are currently it won't work, but as soon as they land in the right spot, this will start to lead them towards the treasure. Once on the ground, Raphael tells Jess that while they're out looking for the treasure, she needs to be aware of the fact that if she sees a coyote pointing to a certain location, they need to go the opposite way, because whenever you see a coyote, it's a trickster, and it will end up causing danger. And so Jess tells him that what we should do is, if they don't know that information, point them in the direction that the coyote is pointing, so that bad things will happen to them, whereas Jess and her father can get away. Tasha manages to hack the CCTV equipment of the place where Billie has landed, and she gets video of Jess in handcuffs at Billie's behest. She sees that Billie has a boat, and she sees that they're outgunned and outmanned. And so Tasha decides that she needs the help of the FBI on this. And so she contacts Agent Ross, sending her videos and evidence that Billie has taken Jess. At the very same time, Agent Ross is trying to process what happened in Sadowski's study. That this man was in there and Agent Ross has fired a weapon at him and he has died. Agent Hendricks comes in and tells Agent Ross that they can't go after Billie. There isn't enough evidence on her. But then Agent Ross shows him the evidence that she's just got from Tasha and says, is this enough to go after Billie? And so now Tasha, Oren, Ethan and Liam, along with the FBI, are all going to be coming after Billie, who has just managed to get to a place called the Devil's Swamp. And now the treasure hunt enters its final stage. However, with the book with Cross S Nostrum on it, Liam has managed to find a bunch of clues from his grandfather. And it turns out that Cross S Nostrum are treasure destroyers and not treasure hunters. And so they believe that once Billie finds his treasure, she's going to destroy it. It's named that Billie Pierce is part of this group, but not the leader, and that the leader is Salazar. And so Billie has been working for Salazar this whole time. Agent Ross and Agent Hendricks manage to get to Billie's plane. Obviously when they get there, Billie's long gone. And so Agent Ross calls Tasha to try and find out if she has any more information about where Jess is. They tell Agent Ross that Jess is going towards the Devil's Swamp. But just as they do, Agent Ross notices something about Agent Hendricks. Throughout the whole show, there has been talk of a mysterious stain, orange dye number 47, which was on the palm of Peter Sadowski when he died. Dr. Zeke had managed to find out where this orange dye had come from, and it was from processed foods, one of which being orange Tic Tacs. And at this particular point, Agent Hendricks takes out a packet of Tic Tacs, orange flavoured. And so straight away, she suspects him of being the man who killed Peter Sadowski. She disarms him and tells him to handcuff himself onto the plane. She then leaves and heads off towards where Jess is. She doesn't call for backup because she doesn't know who she can trust anymore. Once she gets to the dockside, she confronts Billie and tells her that they're going nowhere, that the treasure hunt is over. However, just then, Agent Hendricks turns up behind her and stabs her in the back with a sword that he'd taken from Billie's plane. Agent Ross falls to the ground, and then we see the shock on Raphael's face, as the man who is stood in front of him, Agent Hendricks, is Salazar. And even though he is a cast member from the original films, he is Salazar. And so, here we are, in the last ever episode of National Treasure, Edge of History, and what a journey it's been so far. And I really hope that they get their ass in order and do another series of this, because it was a lot of fun. But here we go, episode 10, Treasure Protectors. Hendricks tells Billie that he's there because he's waited 20 years to do this, to find this treasure. Raphael, however, tells her that she's an idiot if she trusts him. He's the one who killed her brother, and given half a chance, he will stab her in the back as well. Everyone gets on board and they head out into the swamp, at which point Tasha and the boys turn up and they hide out to formulate a plan. They can see Agent Ross lying in a pool of her own blood on the dock, as well as one of Billie's men patrolling up and down. The only issue being is that Billie left two guys behind, and so as they try to formulate a plan of what to do next, the other one appears behind them. He takes them down to the dock, and as the henchmen decide what they're going to do with these four, shots ring out, and we see that Agent Ross isn't dead, but she is gravely wounded. Tasha and Oren take Agent Ross and drive out to the highway to try and find some sort of signal, because their phones are both dead out here, where Ethan and Liam jump into a boat and head off after Jess and the rest of the crew. While on board, however, Jess manages to spy a tool that will help her out ultimately, because at the minute, her and her father are zip-tied at the wrists. And so hopefully the tool that she spied will manage to get them out. But then, who knows what, because they're surrounded by Billie and her crew, including now Salazar, who's come along for the trip. And then for the very last time, we get the incredible opening sequence, and it's just a joy to watch. It really is. And again, the nostalgic memories everything that it floods back. I absolutely love it. Jess and Raphael soon find out the actual motives of Cross S Nostrum, because they know that they're not going to save the treasure, but they're going to blow it up. Essentially, what they are doing is to preserve the way things are right now. Discovering a treasure that people didn't even know they had or existed would cause so much conflict that it's not worth having. And so getting rid of it is the only answer, according to them. Jess and Raphael can't believe that that's what's going to be happening, and so they need to come up with a plan to find this treasure. Just then, the boat gets grounded and they have to start walking. As they do, they come across some skeletal remains, but they can't understand why these people would have turned on each other. It looks like they've been fighting. Only then do we find a coyote. One of the henchmen heads over to it and starts messing around with it, and all of a sudden a noxious gas comes out and starts to send him crazy. He starts flailing, grabs his gun and starts firing off a few rounds, hitting one of the other henchmen until Casey shouts at him and Casey takes shots at him. However, in the melee, Casey has ended up being hit as well. She's injured her leg and has had to strap it up. She tells Billie that she can continue, but at this point, in all the confusion, Jess and Raphael have cut themselves loose and ran. They decide that they need to make it to the treasure before Billie does, because if they don't, then there's going to be issues, because Billie and her crew have C4 with them and will just blow up the treasure. So they need to find it first and get as much out as possible. Ethan and Liam hear the shots and start rowing towards it. They aren't too far behind, but they're behind enough and are now playing catch up. Raphael and Jess keep marching forward trying to find this treasure, but just as they come upon the temple where it potentially is, they stop watching the path and don't realise that they're stepping into a trap. As they walk past the coyote, all of a sudden, a massive cage falls down on them. They get trapped inside and it's way too heavy for the both of them to get out of. Billie, however, has ended up taking the wrong path because Jess has deceived her by leaving a trail, and so they think that they're going the right way. However, when they get to the next trap, they realise that the trap hasn't been set off, and therefore Jess won't have come this way. So Billie decides to turn around and go back. Liam and Ethan, however, have taken the right path, so they've ended up getting in front of Billie. But as they've come down this path, they've managed to find Jess and her father in this cage. And so they decide to make a lever to try and lift it enough to get them out. Out on the road with Oren, Tasha and Agent Ross, it turns out Agent Ross is in a bad way, but they just managed to get enough signal to contact an ambulance. They tell them where they're driving to, and they manage to get a location on them. However, things aren't looking good until a lifeline turns up, and Dr. Zeke starts calling Agent Ross. Tasha picks up, and she informs him of what's gone on, and he tells her that he knows what to do, but obviously Tasha is going to have to do it on her own. She needs help with her breathing, and therefore Tasha is going to have to assist her with her breathing methods. She has to put a straw inside her chest cavity to help Agent Ross start to breathe properly again. Oren pulls the car over, and Tasha does what she's instructed. At that point, once Agent Ross is starting to feel better, but obviously is still bleeding out, we hear sirens in the distance, and we know that help is on the way. Once Agent Ross is loaded into the ambulance, Oren and Tasha decide that they need to go back. They're not sure how they're going to get to where Jess is, but they need to get there and help in whatever way that they can. The search and rescue team aren't even going to turn up for at least half an hour, and even then, Oren's not even sure if they're coming. Casey seems to be struggling with her leg, and as she asks Billie to stop, that she just needs a minute before she can carry on, Agent Hendricks, Salazar, shoots her in the back, just as Raphael said that he would to Billie, but Billie didn't believe him. And so when he mentions that she was a liability, just like her brother, Billie shoots him as well, and claims that she is now Salazar, and forges on towards the temple. Once Jess and Raphael are actually out of the cage, thanks to Ethan and Liam, Ethan tells them that in case Tasha and Oren are coming back with help, he needs to go to a point where they can find him. And so as Ethan heads back, Liam, Jess and Raphael head inside. But just before they can, Billie starts taking pot shots at them. They jump in, close the door, and then find one final puzzle. Jess manages to decipher the symbols on the floor and realises that she needs to step on 3 symbols. One that symbolises Aztec, one that symbolises Incan, and one that symbolises Mayans. Since there are 3 of them, they managed to do this before setting the trap off, because Obviously they do. Otherwise that'd be the stupidest ending to the show. And they finally head into the treasure room. They manage to find a light source and they look around at all the incredible treasure while that fucking music swells and makes you think about Nicolas Cage in National Treasure 1, just looking at all that treasure, or when he finds the City of Gold and when he finds those massive gold bricks. And now Jess has found her own treasure. Billie makes her way inside, but as she does, she realises that the trap has been reset. The door to the treasure room is actually closed now. Jess, her father and Liam are now trapped inside. And just as they realise that as well, they're wondering how they're going to get out until Billie blows a hole in the wall. As she comes in, she starts threatening Jess, telling her that this is personal now because Casey's dead. Everyone's dead because of her. Jess manages to trick Billie, and both Ethan and Liam disarm her. And just then, Jess realises that her father has been crushed under the weight of one of the parts of the doors that had been blown in. She removes the rubble and thinks her father is dead. However, after a moment, he comes to. Just then, Ethan tells them that he had gone for backup, but there was no point, because he saw Billie on her way and decided to follow her. He also managed to set up a smoke signal so that people could find them. After that, we see Billie being taken away in handcuffs, and Jess gets her necklace back. Billie tells her that this was a stupid idea, and that she doesn't know the damage that she's done, before she is carted off to jail. The treasure is recovered and they are given an exhibition, and everyone attends from the group, including Agent Ross, who has obviously made a full recovery. And it seems that now she is dating Dr. Zeke as well. As they walk around the exhibition, we note that Liam isn't there, until he turns up late and tells the group that he found something in his granddad's study. He found a tape about the Pan American treasure. However, there is something on the end of it. When Oren asks, "A treasure thing?" Liam looks and says, "A treasure thing." And that, Disney, is where you fucking ended it. I'm genuinely pissed off now, because I forgot how good the ending is. It gave me goosebumps. Just thinking about it, just wanting it. I want a second series. I know the cast do, because I've heard them talk about it. This was such a fucking fun show, man. It really was. I absolutely loved it. I know it's got its flaws. I know it's got its faults. I know there's things that shouldn't happen in it that do. The cage thing is ridiculous. The fact that Billie managed to get into the treasure room, even though she was setting off the puzzle at the time, doesn't make any sense, but this show was so good. It really was. And I'm so glad that I got to watch it again. And as I said to you before, I've got a special announcement to make. I'll probably make it as well later on, but I am going to be on the National Treasure Hunt podcast with Aubrey and Emily. Every so often they do a Superfans episode, and they have kindly invited me on. And so I will be going on and I will be discussing the National Treasure films, the National Treasure TV show. They know what I do on this podcast, and they currently know that I am doing these episodes. And so I don't know when it's going to come out. Hopefully I will have more information then, and I can put out a special announcement on here. But for now, that is in the pipeline. And so I thank them for giving me the inspiration to do this, because they are part of why this podcast happened. I thank you for listening, and I am done for today. So I will speak to you soon. Bye. And that is it for now, amigos. And yes, I am as angry as you are at me for that sentence, but I hope you enjoyed the show and had some fun along the way. It means a lot that you are listening and supporting me. This is an independent podcast after all, and doesn't get a lot of backing, so it's great to know that you're out there, you're listening. And if you want to come talk to me on any of the platforms I'm on, just come say hi. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, and I'm even a little bit on TikTok. I don't post that much, but I'm on there. And you can also drop comments in the comment sections on any of the platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts from. But as always, thank you for your time, and I will speak to you soon.